There is a tradition in the Branch Davidian history that God would, in the end time, protect his people through a wall of fire. They understand the Bible prophecies to be warnings of what could happen, but not necessarily what must happen. Koresh wrote a letter to his attorney, Dick DeGarrett, in which he said he had good news. God had spoken to him. The waiting period was coming to an end. He and all the people could exit Mount Carmel and go through the system. But first, he was commanded to write down the meaning of his message, the meaning of the 7 seals. After he wrote that manuscript, he and all the people were commanded to leave. They actually had no choice to remain. God had told them to leave.
This message is communicated to the FBI in an attempt to end the siege. Koresh writes his first seal and is preparing the second when the FBI begins implementing its final tactical resolution.
They'd been knocking down trees and dragging things off from outside Mount Carmel.
This message is communicated to the FBI in an attempt to end the siege. Koresh writes his first seal and is preparing the second when the FBI begins implementing its final tactical resolution.
They'd been knocking down trees and dragging things off from outside Mount Carmel, little by little for several weeks. On the 18th, they got rid of everything that was left.
It's just like the papacy during the Dark Ages. When they thought people were heretics, it went in and dealt with them. That was the way they believed. And you know, we have to all follow our conscience. That's why America is supposed to be a great nation where we can follow our conscience according to our beliefs.
There was an aura there that we're going to end this thing.
Individuals inside the Branch Davidian compound. We are in the process of placing tear gas into the building. This is not an assault. This is not an assault. We will not be entering the building. This is not an assault. Do not, under any circumstances.
Gas was inserted using a Mark V delivery system secured to a boom. We would not use dosages that would harm those children.
The FBI's position on this from day one was to be very deliberate, very careful, and not to do anything that would be provocative, that would cause some reaction.
There were no injuries to FBI agents, and FBI agents did not return any fire throughout the entire day, in spite of being fired upon numerous times by occupants of the compound.
The plan was for this to continue for 48 hours, but there was a catch to the plan. If the tanks took fire from the Davidians, they were then allowed to escalate the plan.
According to the official briefing given to Attorney General Janet Reno by the FBI on April the 12th, the assault plan called for demolition of the building and permission to shoot streams of automatic weapons fire into the building to support an armored vehicle's approach.
And we told them what was going to happen. This tank's going to come up, it's going to insert gas. We're not entering the compound. We're not fulfilling this prophecy. Don't presume that.
Was the Attorney General warned that while we'd been very cautious about selecting what your experts say or experts say was non-lethal gas, we might still crush sections in the building? Did she understand that people might be killed? I find an inconsistency between the efforts of the gas insertion plan to save life and the actions of this tank.
At Mount Carmel, you had people that were confined to an area. Where were they going to go? Who were they going to hurt?
They ran out of gas canisters, I think about 10 o'clock in the morning. Everything they'd planned for 48 hours was gone by then, and they were flying in more from Houston.
The CS gas used at Mount Carmel was more potent than normal tear gas. CS gas would induce nausea, vomiting, and disorientation. As the FBI tanks demolished the building, the gas was dispersed from high-pressure bottles mounted on the boom of the combat engineering vehicles.
Any indication about danger or harm to those children, the rule was back off.
One of the first locations gassed by the FBI is the buried school bus, the entryway to an underground storm shelter. Following the gassing, the mothers of the children take them to an enclosed concrete vault, which the FBI calls the bunker. The FBI gasses the bunker for 2 hours.
Approximately half of a panel that we had testified that some of the infants and children, since they didn't have gas masks, could in fact have died from inhalation or effects of CS gas. At the very least, the Department of Justice decision in fact resulted in the babies and children being tortured for at least 3 to 4 hours.
I'd been told that earlier in the morning, the filters wouldn't last long. When it did block up, I'd taken my mask off only to find my face burning and stinging. It was like you had acid all over you. Some of them were trying to wipe it off with minimal amounts of their drinking water on them, perhaps a rag or whatever, only to find that it made it worse. So as I say, what the children were going through, only God knows.
I saw grown men, adults, crying because of the sensation of the gas. As I say, we were fortunate in as much as we were not in an enclosed environment like the children were, being sprayed point blank and not having any ventilation.
We are now at what we believe is the next logical juncture of putting sufficient pressure on them to cause them to come out.
We saw a hole that a tank had made in the south wall of the chapel, and we were kind of standing right just inside of that. There was a heap of rubble, sheetrock, and 2x4s that the tank had pushed in. We were standing just a little back from the hole, trying to decide whether if we went out we would be shot, and as we were standing there, others were kind of coming in